Hello, 3rd and 4th grade. Today we're going to read the next section of our science book. It's chapter 5, part 6, The Atmosphere, an Ocean of Air. So let's start reading. One of the most important substances on Earth is the invisible blanket of air, which completely surrounds us. Air is a mixture of colorless, odorless, tasteless gases. You cannot see, smell, taste, or pick up a piece of air. But air is there. You can feel air when it moves. You can see and hear some of the effects of moving air, such as leaves rustling in the trees or seeds being scattered by the wind. There's no place on the surface of the earth that is without air. The air surrounding the earth is called the atmosphere. No other planet has an atmosphere which can support life the way the Earth's atmosphere can. People, plants, and animals depend on air in order to live. There are only a very few living things which do not need air. You can live for weeks without food and for days without water, but you cannot live for more than a few minutes without air. Gases in the air. Air is made up of several different gases. The atoms of these gases do not combine to form a molecule of air in the same way that the atoms of hydrogen and oxygen combine to form a molecule of water. Instead, they remain separate substances. About 21% of air is oxygen. So a good chunk of the air is oxygen. People and animals need oxygen to breathe and to create energy. Plants need oxygen in order to use the food they have stored. Another gas, nitrogen, makes up most of the air. Air is about 78% nitrogen. So we've got 21% oxygen here and 78% nitrogen. Nitrogen from the air also goes into the soil, where the bacteria on the roots of certain kinds of plants turns it into nitrates. Plants need nitrates in the soil in order to produce food. Very small amounts of other gases make up the remaining 1% of the air. So it's a very small amounts of other random gases. One of those gases is carbon dioxide, which is needed by plants. Do you remember what the process is called in which plants use carbon dioxide, sunlight, water, and minerals to make sugars? That process is photosynthesis. Dust, water vapor, and ice particles are also found in the air, but scientists do not consider these things to be part of the air. Besides the gases which we need in order to live, air also provides protection. The atmosphere shields us from the sun's tremendous heat and from certain deadly rays of the sun. The atmosphere also prevents the earth from becoming too cold at night. Air stores up heat during the day and releases this trapped heat slowly at night. This helps to keep the earth's temperature about the same at all times. So if you think about that, you've got the sun, and it's releasing its rays of sunlight, its heat in all directions. And some of that heat comes over here to the earth. And our atmosphere, which is that layer of air surrounding the earth, it keeps some of the harmful rays of the sun from getting to the earth and harming us here on earth. And it also, the heat that does get through the atmosphere, it traps it in here. So at night, when we're facing away from the sun over here, so here's where we live in the United States, when we're facing away from the sun, we don't get way too cold because the atmosphere traps some of the heat in, so that way we're not too cold. And during the day, it keeps us from getting way too warm, or it keeps some of the harmful rays from the sun from getting to the earth. So it's a very important part of God's design for our earth. Now, layers of air. The air surrounding the earth, the atmosphere, goes up about 1,000 miles above the earth. Earth's gravity holds the atmosphere in its place and keeps air from floating off into outer space. Because of the force of gravity, the air closest to the earth is the densest air. This means that the molecules of air close to the Earth's surface are packed together more closely than the molecules of air high above the earth. The higher up into the atmosphere you go, the thinner the air becomes, because the molecules are spread farther and farther apart. It is part of God's wise plan that the densest air is closest to the earth. If you traveled up even 6 miles above sea level, you would suffocate in a few minutes, because the air up there is less dense. The molecules of oxygen are too far apart, and you would not get enough oxygen to breathe. So if we think about that here, we've got our earth. So I'm going to draw the earth out here. So here's Earth. Here's the land. And it's got some rolling hills with grass. And we've got the atmosphere that surrounds the whole Earth. And this goes up about 1,000 miles. So if you think distance here is about 1,000 miles. And it was saying here that because of the force of gravity, the air closest to the Earth is the densest air. This means the molecules of air close to the Earth's surface are packed together more closely than the molecules of air high above the Earth. So if we think about that here, the blue dots here represent the molecules. So close to the Earth's surface, the gravity holds these molecules really, really tight in here. And so they're packed in really, really tight. Really, 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 really tight. So I'm just going to draw lots really close. They're packed in super duper tight. So there's lots of air. And remember, the air is made up of oxygen, which we need to breathe, as well as nitrogen and some carbon dioxide for the plants. But as you get further and further up here into the atmosphere, it's getting spread out. It's not packed as tightly together. So further up, it's not as packed tightly together. And the farther up you get, the less tightly packed it is together. And God perfectly designed this so that way close to Earth where we live down here, we will have enough oxygen for us to breathe. As we said here, if you go 6 miles up above sea level, so remember this whole distance up here is like 1,000. So if you were to go 6 miles up above sea level, you would suffocate in a few minutes because the air up there is less dense. Sometimes you'll hear the words it's thinner, which means it's less dense. It's packed together less, and so we don't have enough oxygen to breathe. Let's keep reading now. Although most of the Earth's air is in the atmosphere, some air is mixed in the Earth's soil. If you've ever tended a garden, you know that if there's not enough air in the soil becomes packed together too closely, and the plants will not grow properly. Earthworms are gardeners' friends because they plow through the soil, leaving holes for the air. Air is also dissolved in water. Plants and animals which live in water all the time are specially designed to take air from the water. If you allow a glass of water to stand at room temperature overnight, you will be able to see little bubbles of air in the water the next morning. And so that's something that you could do at home. Tonight before bed, you could just get a glass of water and fill it up and leave it to sit out on your counter overnight. And then in the morning, you would see some little bubbles of air in the water. All right, one final thing to read for today. Science concepts. Why is the sky blue? You may have wondered that before. If air is made up of colorless gases, how is it that the sky looks blue? The sky appears to be blue because of the way light behaves when it passes through the molecules of gases in the air. Sunlight appears to us to be white, but it is actually made up of waves of different colors of light. If you have ever seen a rainbow, then you have seen sunlight broken down into its different colors. Light travels through the atmosphere in waves. Each color of light travels in a wave of a different length. Blue and violet have the shortest wavelengths. The molecules of gas in the air bend the shorter wavelengths more than the longer wavelengths. Waves of blue light are scattered throughout the air. The sky appears to be blue because we see waves of blue light in all parts of the sky. So now you know why the sky looks blue.